what you must have to understand is that your family may not necessarily always be your greatest support in some way, shape, or form. Now, for some people, this may not be applicable, but for those of you that are on the path of success and you know you want to live a better life than what your parents are living, do the things that you want to do the things that you want to do with whomever you want to do them with, you have to realize that the things that you want is so unfamiliar to your family that sometimes they will knock it and they will try to downplay it and say that that is not possible. And the reason why I say that is because there's things that I've seen that my parents or my family have may not necessarily seen, and they try to hold that shit against me. Like, oh, like what makes you think that's possible? And they may not say it, but subconsciously I know what they're trying to say. So they might not directly say like, oh, like that's not possible. They may beat around the bush and be like, do you think you could really do that? Like, I mean, he's been able to do it, but do you think you could really do that? Do you think that's a good idea? They will try to like make me question myself towards the things I wanted. And when I was younger, it would get to me. I'm gonna be very transparent. It would get to me, but I would always push through. Like I knew it was just something that it was just them projecting their insecurities onto me because they didn't believe that that was possible. When there's other people in the world that they know that have done it, which doesn't make any sense. And they try to hold that shit against you, like, oh, you just because you've seen X, Y, Z don't mean you know anything, da 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 da. And it gets to a point where I sit back and I actually like study psychology and kind of like how the mind works and stuff like that in sales. And it's funny because they will try to, let's give a prime example. Let's say we're having a conversation or whatever, and I bring something up about money. They may use like unconscious clues or like different body language. They might lower their voice and start to lean forward so I can listen and really get some sort of and be manipulated by their hypnotic rhythm. So what that means is that with them leaning in, they're trying to get me to come closer so they can hear me. They may lower their voice a little bit. They may slow their words down so I can hear every word that is coming out of their mouth. And for me being able to understand that, I've really been able to understand how people can manipulate people without them even realizing it, right? And when you really understand how powerful the mind is that everything is just patterns. And what patterns are can be a culmination of your habits, your thoughts, your beliefs, people who you surround yourself with. All these patterns kind of make up who you are as a person, and it makes up your character. There may be people that have not so good patterns. There may be people that have good patterns and they can use it for their benefit, or those detrimental patterns may be a benefit to what they're doing and vice versa. So you really just have to have a great understanding of who you are, and how you're able to do this is just getting alone. And that's what I had to do. All the negativity that they were bringing around me and telling me I couldn't do this, telling me I couldn't do that, second guessing myself, and me saying I should do X, Y, and Z really made me question myself when I was younger. But as I kind of went into the pursuit of how the mind works, it didn't really faze me anymore. And if you guys are within that phase where you really don't have anybody to lean on or a shoulder to lean on and kind of vent to and kind of talk about some of your issues or talk about your dreams and aspirations and goals with, number one, get in solitude. And if you live with your parents, you may have to isolate yourself with them or do whatever you possibly can to just stay alone. I'm not saying you have to cut them off completely, but just don't have meaningless conversations about anything or talk about your goals and you know that it's going to be a detriment. Yes, it's going to be challenging, but you have to do this just for a short period of time and prove them wrong. That's it. And once you do this stuff for a certain period and you really start to work on you and figure out what it is that you want to do and go all in at it, and they start seeing results, then they'll start to back off. They'll start to back off. Trust me. My parents started to back off once I started giving them motherfuckers results. Trust me. And sometimes in those points in time, I did get a great sense of achievement and fulfillment, but it wasn't to be like, oh, I proved you wrong, fuck you. It was more so like I showed them what was possible. In their bubble and in their world, they may not have necessarily thought that real estate was a viable option for them to be able to have financial freedom or do whatever. But with me saying that I was committed to this shit and there was nothing else in this world that I would want to do, And I've been able to prove time and again that I'm committed to what I'm doing. I have results from it. They started to back off a lot more. And then sometimes it was almost like a flip of the switch where it was like they were starting to support me. And when you're on your journey, it's important for you guys to get in certain environments and meet certain people, because those people are going to get you to the next level. And I'm sure you guys have heard the cliche saying of that strangers are probably going to be your best friends. And the reason I say that is because your family knows you for who you are today, and that stranger knows you for who you are with your potential. And not in every situation, but just hear what I'm saying. What I mean by that is your parents have been raising you for X amount of time. So they know how you walk, they know how you talk, they know how you think, they know what you like to eat, they know all these things. So the moment you change that, where you start thinking different, talking different, acting different, it's going to be weird for them, because back to what I said before, it's all about patterns. If you have a pattern doing something, people are going to be accustomed to that. Once you break that traditional pattern, it's unfamiliar to them. So they'll be like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? It's unfamiliar. But with a stranger, they don't have any background on you. So they're just taking you as day one face value, as who you are and who you are becoming. And that's why I say solitude is going to be important. You're going to have to separate yourself. It is what the fuck it is. If you don't want to do it, then shit, just have an understanding of that. Those people are going to hold you back, and you will live a life of misery, and you will continue to do the things that you're doing right now and just hate yourself for it. And then you'll probably start being depressed, and then you'll just live an unfulfilling life. And I think life is beautiful in the sense that there is heaven on earth as long as you focus on the things that are benefiting you and bringing some sort of rhetorical value to your life. And I think that a lot of the time people focus on things that are really unimportant, things like that are in the news and doing X, Y, and Z. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't watch the news or you should watch the news. I'm just saying, look at the news for what it is. There's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of information they're trying to push that can manipulate our minds to cover up for something even bigger. And when you realize what the news provides is nothing but negativities, killings, killing people, derogatory information, negative information, a lot of hoax. So you have to understand and have a level of discernment. Now, how do you build this level of discernment? Getting outside information and coming up with your own conclusion. Don't just get your information from one source like a news article or the TV, the news, all that stuff. Really gather information. So let's say you watch the news and then you hear somebody debunk it, and maybe you do your own due diligence. Figure out your own conclusions and figure out with your own cognitive function to figure out why do you believe what you believe, and why do you think that about certain things or different topics or different philosophies and different ideologies. And I think that if we were to think the same, we wouldn't be unique in our own ways, and we wouldn't be able to grow from one another, because having different perspective on things can actually help us grow. And sometimes when people can't convey their thoughts to other people, they kind of get mad, and they get mad like, oh, why do you think that? Da, 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 da. And those people just don't have the emotional intelligence to be able to debunk their mind and really figure out what it is that they're trying to say. They tend to not be able to let their words out, tend to speak thorough, clearly, and whatnot. So just really have that cognitive awareness. And what I would do is I would meditate, I would read, I would watch articles, and I would kind of go down the rabbit hole of like conspiracy theories. Not to the point where it was like, oh, I'm a conspiracy theorist. It was just like, why do these people think things about this way? Why do they come up with these scenarios? Why do they come up with these conclusions? Because there's a reason why they're out there, right? So I kind of went down the rabbit hole because I knew deep down I just wanted to think different than the regular person. So I had to do abnormal things, and those abnormal things are what got me to where I am today. And I'm not saying you guys have to do this. I'm just saying to have an emotional awareness and have emotional intelligence and build that muscle and really be able to understand and have your own thoughts and intellect and just know how to deliver it. And I know I kind of went off the rails a little bit with what I'm saying, but I just really wanted to think. I just didn't want to be normal, and conspiracy theories just weren't normal. So I went down the rabbit hole to a certain degree and kind of figure out what those theses were. Like, it could have been something with the moon landing or whatever, but that's a different topic for another day. But I just think that it's important to always be able to grow and always be able to understand that it's okay for you to change and become a different person and evolve. And I think some people are scared of evolution because of not only the work that you have to put in to become that new person, but also too that the mind is familiar with what's familiar. If you're starting to transcend and you want different things out of your life, it's gonna have to come with a different person, and that different person has to think different, walk different, talk different, and act different. And sometimes with the mind, it can be hard for that change because it's so familiar with being regular, content, complacent. So you have to break that barrier. And breaking that barrier, you just have to push yourself. You just have to tell your mind, no, I'm not eating that, or no, I'm not going there, or no, I'm not hanging out with them. And over time, as you build this pattern, you've been able to build a level of discernment. Like, hey, those people are no good for me. Oh, these people are good for me. And sometimes people don't even understand that the people that they're surrounding themselves with are not good for them. But since they don't have that pattern, they haven't built that muscle of having that emotional intelligence, they tend to stay in their ways, stay stuck in their ways, not really change and do all these sorts of things because they're complacent and content with who they are and how they think and what their worldview is and how their ideology is and how they think. And I think that when you're going out trying different things and you know exactly what it is you want, just put your blinders up, focus on what it is that you generally want, and go all in for it. Because what you'll understand is that you really only do get one life in this world, and why would you not go for everything? If you know you're on earth for a limited time, for however X amount of years, you really want to do everything that you possibly can to live a life that you genuinely were okay with living. And I see a lot of times when people are saying that they want one thing, but they do a totally different thing, and they wonder why they get the same outcome. It's like, because you're not willing to change. You say you want a McLaren, but you work at McDonald's and you're not doing anything to get yourself out of that circumstance to have that McLaren. And it's cool to desire these materialistic things, but I think the most important thing when it comes to the material things is that who you became. Like, every time I bought a Louis wallet, and every time I look at the wallet, it's like I became somebody that could spend $500 on a wallet and not give a fuck. Like, obviously, when I got the wallet, it was cooling off for like an hour, and then after that, it was just a regular wallet to me. And I don't really put materialistic things on a pedestal, and I don't let it change my character, but it's definitely important to enjoy those things and enjoy the best things that life has to offer. And I think people are hypocrites when they say, oh, I wouldn't spend that much money on X, Y, and Z, but if you had the money, you would do it. That doesn't make any sense. So really, you're just coping with yourself to say, oh, it's okay for me to have these regular mundane things when I know I want more and bigger. But you're not willing to do more and bigger things to be able to get those bigger and better things. And honestly, this is a subject that I can generally talk about all day, but it gets to a point where if people aren't willing to change who they are to get to the next level, then I don't want to help them in any way, shape, or form. A lot of people are stuck in their ways. They really don't want to grow. And it gets to a point where you just have to separate yourself. That brings me to my point that I initially spoke on. You just have to separate yourself. It's going to be challenging. You're going to feel alone. You're going to feel like no one's there to support you. You're going to feel like you're a lone wolf. And it's only for a brief period of time. I would say my time was maybe about 6 months to a year, maybe. And then I was able to find my tribe. But I'll say this. When you're in those moments of solitude and you really reflect on where you've come from and how you get to where you are today, you really debunk the situation. You really get a light of who you generally are and who you want to become and all your character deficiencies. And as you understand that, I would say one of my character deficiencies was I was kind of lazy in the initial phases of me wanting to change. And, I would see these people on social media. I'm like, every successful person works out. And I asked myself, did the successful version of me and the ideal version of me that has it all, would he be working out? And I basically told myself, yeah, he would be. He'd be in amazing shape. He would eat healthy. He would be on a proper diet routine. He would have a certain workout regimen. And I started doing that. And in the initial phases, it was definitely hard. Having to force myself to get up, having to do this, having to do that, having to make sure I don't eat as much as I used to, having to cut weight, having to do X, Y, and Z exercises, then pushing my body to the limit. yeah, it was all challenging in the initial phase, but once I got into month 2, 3, 4 and had that consistency, it became easy. And I actually enjoyed working out. You know, my body feels great. I'm probably in the best shape I've ever been in my life. And I just say that to say is that, yes, in the initial phase, it's going to be hard. Look at a train, for example. When a train is getting ready to go on its rails and can start pushing, it's slow. It's like, it's chugging along. It's really pulling all the weights. It's starting to push a little bit. And then once it starts getting that momentum, it starts going on autopilot, and then it starts going so fast that it's harder to stop it than it is for it to keep going. And you'll get to that point personally. Like, even throughout my journey, like, I thoroughly enjoy me getting better. That's the most fulfilling thing. And you really get to see who you are and what your potential can actually be when you really put yourself in uncomfortable situations to be able to grow. And when you understand that, it gets to a point where, you know, you don't really need anything outside of you to determine who you are. You know who you are through the work you put in your results that you've been able to get from it. And then when people say, oh, you're not worthy of that, oh, you shouldn't do that, that shit doesn't really phase you. And all it is just words. If you let words dictate or control the way you feel, you'll always be doomed. But if you have a genuine sense of who you are, and you know what you're doing, and you know it's for bigger intent, and you know it's not for ill will, then the words that people say don't even fucking matter. But you have to build this muscle up. You're not going to have it in the initial phase. Or if it's something you've always been born with, cool, use it to your advantage. But I know for me, at first it wasn't, so I had to build that muscle up personally. But it gets to a point where you focus on people saying that you can't do this, can't do that. It drains your energy, and you don't have any energy for yourself to produce the life that you want. That's why the solitude part is so important. And I think that for me and what I've been able to accomplish thus far, and I know I'm doing a lot more and I have a lot of stuff in the pipeline, it's just that, you know, with every level have its own unique problems, and it's just another way for me to learn and grow and get to the next level. If you guys like this video, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.